Sage Wanderer coming at you from my van down by the river. So I think that there is a major division in our country, and it's not really right versus left. It's not even really conservative versus liberal. I think it's more about the pragmatic agnostic against people of faith. Now, let me clarify that people of faith aren't necessarily Christians. I'm not talking necessarily about religious people. I'm talking about people who look at something and ask the question, is there more to this than it seems? Is this really what it appears to be? There are those in our society, and always have been those in our society, who look at something in a very black and white way. They look at it and they immediately judge that this is legit, this is the way it is, this is what it seems to be. And then they file it away and walk away. And then there are those of us in society who look at something, an event, an item, an idea, and we go, what is the part that I don't see? For instance, a pragmatist might look at a rock on the ground and say, there is a rock, it's this big, it has this much, mass, and that's a fact. Where a person of faith, a person who thinks outside the box, a person who questions things, will look at the same rock, and either they will think that rock might be much bigger than it appears because there may be rock underneath the ground, and when I pull on that rock, there could be more under there. Or they don't even see the rock because they're curious about what's under the rock. So, some people might call this open-mindedness versus closed-mindedness. And really, I think it's the basis of a thing, an ideology, a concept known as faith to many people. And, I don't want to get into a Christian religious discussion, even though I'm about to quote the Bible. And in quoting this, I want to look at this less and make it less about doctrine of Christian thought, but rather look at it for what it is, a statement by a person I consider to be brilliant. And he defined what this idea of faith is, what this open-mindedness is, this open-mindedness versus a closed-mindedness concept. And he said it like this in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1 in the New Testament of the King James Version of the Bible. I think I'm just paraphrasing here. I memorized this. I just can't remember which version I memorized. I memorized it when I was a kid. But Paul said that faith is the substance of things hoped for. Now, what that means is that you can hope for something, but when you put faith into it, when you hope the universe or God or whatever you have faith in will do something about it, now you're giving it some substance. And, it becomes something more than hope. We'll set that kind of faith aside because there's two definitions. He's not describing the same idea. He has two very different definitions of what faith is. Number one, it's the substance of things that you hope for. The other one is, it's the evidence of things unseen. Evidence of things unseen. In other words, just because you see it, just because you can't see it, doesn't mean it isn't real. And the perfect example of this is air. You can't see the air, but if I cover up your mouth, you'll want some air real fast. You'll be like, hey, get off of me, I need to breathe. So air is real even though you cannot see it. So it takes faith on some level. Imagination is another word potentially. But I think it's an open mind to say, okay, even though I don't have the rock hard evidence that air exists, I know it's there. I know I need it, and I know I breathe it. And let me tell you, when you cut it off, you know. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there's two kinds of people in our culture right now. People who believe that whatever the mainstream media has told them is 100% true, that unless you can provide me with rock solid evidence like video evidence and multiple witnesses, I will not believe it, no matter how much you might say it's true. But let me give you an instance of, say, something like a piece of rotten food. Okay, so smells. You can't prove smells. You can't bottle up a smell and go, hey, check this out. This is what I smelled. That's why, you know, this is why recently the Supreme Court has ruled, well, it was an appellate court, I think, Court of Appeals, that cops can no longer use the smell of marijuana for, for probable cause to search your vehicle. Because how can you prove a smell? Smells are subjective. But that doesn't mean that because you smell rotten meat, there's not a dead thing. So, but there are those people that'll be like, oh, you don't. Well, like the story of when I was almost killed in a fiery inferno that is on my channel. You can go back and look at that story. I told my dad I smelled gas. And he went, kid. You see, he couldn't see it. But it doesn't mean it isn't there. I can't see God, but it doesn't mean he isn't there. I can't see a conspiracy, but it doesn't mean it isn't true. I'm smart enough to take all of the pieces to put together the smell, the sense of it, this piece and that piece. Hey, I might not be able to see the whole deer, but if I see an antler, you can bet there's a deer under it. That's a hunter analogy. But there are two kinds of people in the world. Those kind of people who look at Alex Jones and think, this is a madman. How can anyone possibly believe anything Alex Jones has got to say? And then there are other people that go, let's hear him out. Just because it sounds crazy doesn't mean it isn't true. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not after you. It's a complex concept to some degree, and I don't know how good of a job I've done at explaining it. But I think it's at the core of the division between us. Those of us who believe in God and those of us who believe in CNN. I mean, those of us who believe that there might be a global conspiracy to try to control the earth, because isn't that human nature? I mean, to assume there's not one makes you naive. There's that group. And then there's the other group. There's like, you guys are just a bunch of paranoid nuts. You're all crazy. You understand that sooner or later, those of us that believe things like 9/11 was an inside job, those of us that believe things like John F. Kennedy was not killed by a single gunman, those of us who believe things like there might be a secret space program, that there might be super secret weapons and super soldiers, those of us that think that the Georgia Guidestones were put up there to explain to everyone what it is they're doing, what they plan to do. Those of us that believe there's a they will soon be labeled as insane. Since when do open-minded people of faith now suddenly we're insane? When really, honestly, if you want to know the person who is giving the most faith, the person that is taking the biggest leap of faith, it's actually you pragmatist people. Because your leap of faith is you're trusting the government, you're trusting the news, you're trusting the internet. Oh, just because you can Google it doesn't make it real. Just because you watched a YouTube video doesn't make you an expert. And just because Google says history happened a certain way and someone like me who lived there tells you, no, I lived through it. History happened different. I don't care what Mr. Google says. You're the one that's taking the leap of faith to trust the idiot box, to trust the group think, to trust the internet, to trust the news, to trust your government. You're the one that's walking on faith, really. I'm the skeptic. I'm the one who's saying, wait a minute, maybe there's more than meets the eye. Maybe that just looks like solid ground, but it's really quicksand. Honestly, conspiracy theorists aren't the nuts. It's the ones who believe the party line. It's the ones who believe the story that's being told them. You're the nuts. You're the one who's exhibiting this faith in something you can't see, hear, or smell, or taste. Because let me tell you, it's being skeptical is much more difficult. And it does make you a conspiracy theorist, because you wouldn't even walk down the conspiracy theory road if you weren't a skeptic. If you weren't going, I don't believe what I see. I don't believe what you're telling me. Oh, it's swamp gas? Oh, really? Oh, that's a picture of a bear. Okay, that looks like a bipedal ape to me. You know, oh, that was fake. Those aren't real footprints in the wilderness of a giant ape creature in North America. Oh, yeah, that wasn't a UFO. That was a weather balloon. You know, who's the fool? You ask me. You know, and honestly, or you answer the question, you know, who's the fool? And honestly, I stumbled across this video and made it because I watched a video of Irish people. You ever watch those Irish people videos? Like Irish people eating American food, Irish people eating hot peppers. I don't know why. It's just like, it's a thing. And there's the one, Irish people watch Alex Jones. And they pretty much just thought he was nuts. But I could tell all of the people they chose were people who don't have open minds. They probably don't believe in God. I mean, if you believe in God, shouldn't you also be open-minded enough to believe in, you know, Bigfoot, for instance? You know, open your mind. There are those that have the closed mind and those that have the open mind. Which one are you?